This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody out there. KLEAN Radio. We are a show about addiction and recovery, and we're here to answer questions that sometimes people are a little scared to ask. And last week, I didn't get the chance to watch the show, and I know nobody else out in America did because everybody was listening to KLEAN Radio, so nobody saw the Emmys. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was I understand people. I understand why people have anger sometimes towards addiction. You know, they celebrated the death last week of Corey Monteith on the Emmys. Do we the word celebrate is a bad word. Do we mourn the passing of these stars or of people the right way?
Yeah, and mourning is different than paying tribute to,
right.
In the way that they did it. And that's sort of my point. What's the appropriate venue for that? And I think, a briefer mention or a foundation or scholarship donation to, the problem. I mean, if somebody had died of, say, I don't know, a burst appendix and didn't get treated, would they have done it the same way? Or or if they died of leukemia, would there have been a donation to the Leukemia Foundation?
I think every time they do one of these honorariums for somebody, sadly, that passed off to drugs, they should show people that are still living that have destroyed their lives from drugs. Or
people that have recovered and done really well.
That's exactly right.
Right? I mean, Jack Klugman was a heavy drinker, so was Larry Hagman.
And both sober.
And they both got sober.
Yeah. And Larry Hagman actually needed a new liver. And, so that's just my thoughts on it. I was also a little disturbed at the end of the show with Michael Douglas. And this is something we talk about all the time with the criminalization of drugs.
Right.
Right. So Michael Douglas, he's got his kid, heroin dealer, heroin smuggler. He smuggled drugs into his jail and in his lawyer's bra. And here's a guy that's calling on the judicial systems, basically saying, you should look at this. And we also all the time talk about the decriminalization of drugs and should drug addicts be in jail. But there's a certain thing with being dealing drugs like heroin that there should be, different sorts of punishment for that.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue where I'm really conflicted about it. I mean, even with marijuana, it's now legal to smoke marijuana in several states, and the federal government says they're not going to do anything about it, but it's still illegal to grow it in any large quantities, and it's certainly illegal to distribute it in massive quantities. So, but yet, to support all these medical marijuana facilities or even legal recreational facilities now, you still have to grow and distribute large amounts of marijuana. So there's a lot of people who are still breaking the law. And even though the federal government said they're not going to go after marijuana cooperatives and recreational places in Colorado, for example, they're still going after big drug busts. So there's a lot of mixed stuff about that. And there are different classifications of drugs, as we know. Part of the problem is the whole issue of drugs and the history of drugs and the law has been integrated with racism and integrated with political motivations that have nothing to do with the real danger of the drugs involved. So, for example, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, saying it's up there as one of the most dangerous drugs, and cocaine is a Schedule II drug, which makes no sense.
The person that was doing coke made the law.
Well, that was Nixon, so there you go. So,
that's exactly right.
Nixon was paranoid that marijuana would undercut his political stance, and the free love movement and the hippie movement would take over by being mind altered on marijuana. Although we're finding out that now that a lot of LSD was released through the CIA, so that's kind of interesting.
That's on your conspiracy page.
That's not on my conspiracy page.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this tonight, because I do believe there is still an anger towards people that are getting sober or that have had issues with drugs and alcohol. And we don't get mad at people that have cancer. We don't get mad at people that have other diseases. But when it comes to alcoholism and addiction, we tend to get...
I get that, Judah, but also people that have cancer tend not to steal your mom's wallet.
No, that's exactly right.
I mean?
I agree.
There's behavioral elements of addiction, that craving and that other thing that does create criminal behavior. So there has to be some sort of responsibility still taken
and accountability,
and accountability for the behaviors that are criminal. But that being said, you're not going to be able to deal with those unless you deal with the underlying problem of addiction.
Right.
And so you still have to be accountable for your actions, but society as a whole should be trying to figure out ways to prevent further things happening. And that's what the public health movement's largely about. Even with drug replacement therapies and whatnot. Where people basically are given a drug so that they don't have to steal or whatever, and then hopefully they decide to get sober on their own for their own reasons. But that's a very largely unpopular point of view in the United States, and it's becoming less popular in Europe, where it's the dominant treatment method.
Okay. By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. We're talking a little bit about tonight. It sounds like we're talking about, should drug addicts be put in jail? I mean, and I think that's one of the biggest issues we are going to come across, especially with legalization and not legalization. But what is your opinion on that?
Well, I think we should legalize all drugs. And by that, I don't mean that we should just say, hey, all drugs are legal. I think they should be regulated like alcohol. And it's been shown in countries where that actually does occur that the rates of addiction drop dramatically and the rates of crime drop dramatically. We know the Volstead Act, which created prohibition in the United States for alcohol, was a disaster, although it did lower some alcohol-related deaths.
And it made the Kennedys very rich.
It made the Kennedys very, very rich. At the end of the day, it was clear that, you can't stop people from doing these things. And I think also when you say, you know what, this stuff's legal, but, you have a good chance of really damaging yourself if you do it, consumption tends to go down. And we've seen that in other countries where they have fully legalized drugs.
So how do we help parents out there? Here's a good question for you. How do we help parents that, their kids are using drugs? Their kids are using, whether it's marijuana or now Molly's become this huge du jour drug that, I know it's not new. It's just a new form of synthetic ecstasy, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there. I mean, people will sell all sorts of drugs under a moniker. So,
right.
They'll say Molly and who knows what it is. I mean,
so what do we say to parents that are listening right now, to family members that see their kids doing this stuff or see their loved ones doing this stuff? And because there is a mixed message out there. And the mixed message is this stuff isn't so bad. Mm-hmm. What do we say to them when it's having that effect,
Well, part of the problem is, once again, if you look at the history of drugs, we have this tendency to make drugs sound worse than they are, and make alcohol seem not as bad as it is.
Right.
And so there's so much hypocrisy in our culture that it's hard for anybody to really have any truly believable stance or anybody to truly believe in the information. Like if you just think about crack cocaine, people think, oh, if you smoke crack, you're addicted right away.
And you're whack.
Yeah, and that's, if you smoke crack, you're whack. But that's not true. Most people that smoke crack actually do not become addicted to it in the long run. Statistically, it's not the evil demon that it is. Now, I'm not condoning crack use. I think you're pretty much not.
We want to get that right out of the way. You're not condoning crack use.
Smoking crack at all is dangerous. It can cause, seizures. A lot of seizures come from smoking crack. And also you can have strokes, or if you have any type of vascular disorder in your brain, it can cause, hemorrhaging in your brain. So, it's a very highly potent form of cocaine. So it's just advisable not to do it. But that being said, the amount of people that actually smoke cocaine and the number of people that die from it is not as bad as alcohol. At the same point, that doesn't mean that it's okay. It's still bad for you and it's bad for people. And, it's weird though, and people also have other myths like that. It's just people in the ghetto that smoke crack, and yet more white people smoke crack in the suburbs than, people in the ghetto. So it's crazy.
If you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. The number here is 800-222-5222. It's 800-222-5222. We're a show about addiction and recovery. We have a lot of new markets out there that are listening, and we'd like to welcome them. And we're talking about some stuff that sometimes it's not always easy to talk about. And it's not easy to talk about for guys like us sometimes because we work in the field and we don't always know because we see so many people dying from this stuff, from alcoholism, from addiction.
Well, it's not just, dying. Yeah. It's to me, and I've talked about this a few times on the show, but there's use, abuse, and addiction. And the thing is, it's not just if you become fully addicted, it's what happens to your life during the other phases.
Right.
Like when you start up and, what problems do occur in your life? You can become impaired and get in an accident and die. You didn't really die directly from the substance. You died from the car accident. But, we see a lot of that. I was actually really disturbed when Sanjay Gupta got on CNN in the last month or so, and was talking about how there was no recorded deaths from marijuana. And I was like, and I saw him in the green room at CNN in New York, and I was like, Sanjay, did you look into any stats on deaths by accident when people were on marijuana? And he's like, oh, we couldn't find any statistics on that. And I can guarantee you there's people that have gotten into car accidents and died and had THC in their blood.
And that's why the marijuana movement dedicated a name of a new strain of marijuana to Sanjay.
Yeah, right?
And I mean, it is. It's very. I mean, I've never met him like you have, but I think that's very. It's a very bad. What's the word I'm looking for? You know, you can't give that statistic out. That nobody died.
Yeah,
nobody's died.
Well,
from marijuana.
I think he's correct that nobody has overdosed from marijuana. Although I'm not sure that's true either, because Bruce Lee died from ingesting hashish, and he ended up causing bleeding in his stomach, and he died. So there have been deaths from hashish, and certainly we see most overdoses on drugs where there's multiple drugs being used. So I can guarantee you there's people that were out there that are doing coke, smoked pot, and drank, and then died from the combination of the use and overdose.
So one of the things I wanted to also talk about tonight is because there is this different, like, we're talking about all these different drugs. So you're talking about crack. You know, somebody's going to talk about alcohol. What are some of the most dangerous drugs? Or is it
the most dangerous drug in terms of actual fatalities is tobacco.
Right. Well, we don't talk about tobacco on the show.
Because you smoke and you don't want me to talk about it. But tobacco is by far the worst.
Right.
It's one of the most addicting, and it kills the most people. And it actually decreases the quality of life for more people on this planet than any other substance. Alcohol is number 2.
Side note, just so you know, I am going to see a hypnotherapist. My friend Joel Bess is paying for me to go to a hypnotherapist on October 2nd.
Yeah.
Because October 1st, I celebrate 15 years of sobriety.
Not including tobacco.
It's not including tobacco. So my gift to myself for my 15 years of sobriety is to quit smoking.
Wow.
So
you're going to give it a real shot,
I'm going to give it a real shot. I'm going to go to a hypnotherapist on, as Rand, look at him. That's the devil we fight.
I know, our producer's in the back saying to light up a cigarette. What is going on here?
I don't know. It's Sodom and Gomorrah in the studio over there. But so go on. So I just wanted, it's pretty cool. 15 years of sobriety, and that's my gift to myself finally.
Yeah. And the other thing, even with marijuana, people aren't looking at the long-term consequences of using it. First of all, just developmental delays in the brain, but also lung cancer. There's 4 times the amount of tar in a joint than there is in a cigarette. So you can't tell me that people aren't going to be developing lung cancer and certainly bronchitis and pneummonia from.
And it doesn't matter
pot.
how many times you hike or eat at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
That smoking marijuana joint still has it. It doesn't like mask it, And
exactly.
And I really do think people believe that. Like if I go to the gym 7 times a day, 7 times.
Or just do a cleanse with cayenne pepper once every 3 months and blow your kidneys out. That's
right. Or
idea.
drive a Prius. that somehow that exempts me from dying from ecstasy. And I have a huge resentment against them. By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. One of the things we're going to talk about in the next little bit is what are some of the most dangerous drugs, and I think everybody probably out there has a difference, has a different thought. Some people are going to say meth. Some people are going to say crack. Everybody, I think, every year there's a new one because the media, reports certain things as being the worst. Right now, it's crystal meth. That's the worst.
And crocodile is the new one.
Yeah, that's the new one.
That just came into Arizona. They found from Russia.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible narcotic made with gasoline and other stuff people are injecting into your flesh, literally rots off your body.
And that's that is we should give a public service announcement. If a drug started in Russia, it's probably not that safe.
Well, you have to throw vodka out then.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it's probably not a good idea to take. But let's go down the list a little bit. So alcohol, pot, very dangerous.
Yeah, in its own way. I mean, they're all different in their own way. Certainly, crystal meth is, we're giving out basically crystal meth to lots of adolescents in the form of Adderall. Yeah. So, different forms of amphetamines have been around for a long time, but, speed and amphetamines is pretty dangerous. It also depends on how you use it, right? I mean, even heroin, for example, snorted isn't as dangerous for you as if you shoot it under your skin, which is called skin popping, or if you inject it into your veins, which is IV drug use. So the more addicted and the more dangerous way you use some of these substances, the more dangerous they become. And with heroin on overdoses, of course, we've seen most often people die from aspiration, which means they choke on their own vomit or saliva.
See, I love that you're talking about this, and this is like to the people out there listening. I'm sitting here with Andrew Spanswick, my co-host, but also somebody that's been in the industry for a long time. And one of the things I love that you're saying is, you were in the agreement with Sanjay Gupta after he states that marijuana has never killed anybody. And on the face of it, you're right. Maybe nobody's ever overdosed. I mean, we can't prove if somebody has or not, but one of the things you're talking about is all the other ways you can die from these things.
Well, Americans want everything black and white, right? They assume that like you take a person and they smoke marijuana, and as if everybody that smokes marijuana is the same. If you're one stroke away from having, or one tick away from having a cardiac arrest because you've eaten 15 cheeseburgers every day, and you smoke pot and it gives you a panic attack and you have a cardiac arrest, they're not going to blame your death on the smoking pot. They're going to blame it on the cardiac arrest from your cholesterol level and your clogged arteries. But certainly smoking pot is not advisable for someone that has those kind of health problems.
But you're right. It fits this easy little black and white
Everybody
picture.
just wants to say pot isn't dangerous. It won't kill you. But it's an additive problem. It's nothing particularly healthy about it.
And again, to the people out there listening.
Unless you really have, there's a few conditions where it is extremely helpful. But it's very few. It certainly isn't the ones that most people get a medical marijuana license for, like back pain and anxiety and insomnia.
And just so people know, we're not the temperance movement, okay? We're not here to tell you.
Yeah, I'm for legalizing it. I would just rather people be more honest about it. I'm so sick of the hypocrisy about drugs.
Just know what you're doing.
Yeah, and if people want to make bad choices, let them make bad choices, but they should also, the consequences should be personal, and if they have consequences that affect other people, then they should take responsibility for those.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back to calls. We have calls lining up. You're listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. One of the things we're talking about tonight is, what are some of the dangerous drugs out there? What do you think they are? Give us a call. The discussion continues at KLEAN Radio.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits. Now back to Andrew Spanswick and Judah Friedman.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. We're discussing tonight one of the things. What are some of the most dangerous drugs, and what are your opinions on them? So give us a call. We'd love to hear your opinions. And I'm here again with my co-host with the most. The reason I say that is because if anybody out there is struggling or needs anything, I can't think of a better person than Andrew Spanswick sometimes to answer those questions. So, yeah, that's a shout out to you on your birthday. But
My
let's
Facebook birthday.
Your Facebook birthday. Let's go to Gerald in Portland. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Gerald.
Good evening.
How you doing, Gerald?
How are you?
Good.
So you got a question?
Yes.
You got a statement? What do you got?
I got kind of some history for you. I am an alcoholic. I went through 40 days or 48 days of treatment for alcohol and drug addiction, and I got out. I was clean and sober for up until 2000. Well, from 80 or 91 till 2007 when I got hurt at work.
Right.
And I ended up being on Oxycontin and all these prescription drugs from my doctor, and I got hooked on them.
Yeah.
And I finally, after taking these things for 5 years, I finally, looked in the mirror and seeing my addictive self that I was when I was drinking. I lost weight, my bowels weren't moving, and it was because of all the drugs that I was taking that were prescribed to me because of my neck surgeries. I had 2 of them.
Absolutely.
In that period of time.
Yeah, opiates are very dangerous and cause all sorts of problems with addiction. So that's nothing you're saying surprising.
I got real lethargic, and my wife gave me an ultimatum to straighten my act up or get out. And I looked at the guy, walked outside, and said, I'm going to get out the easy way. And I just happened to, have a friend that called and was looking to see about what the couch was that I liked that they just delivered. And my wife was looking for me. She saw me outside with the gun, and the SWAT team came in and hauled me off. And I had gone cold turkey for almost a week before. I didn't tell her, and that was part of the problem because I had cold turkey. I was taking 150 Percocets, 150.
Well, you're lucky
Vicodin.
you didn't just die from withdrawal. I mean, and also I think your story is really interesting because it points to the fact that there is a need for medical intervention when you come off a medication. You have to what they call titrate off medication. You can't just stop taking it. And a lot of people die from just stopping drinking alcohol, far less narcotics. So, the fact that it went down the way it did for you doesn't surprise me. I'm really glad that you weren't able to kill yourself. And we see a lot of homicidal and suicidal ideation when people stop using drugs as much as when they're on them. And this is one of the things that I've been talking a lot on TV lately about is, these different cases where people are snapping all of a sudden. And what I keep trying to get across in the media, and which oftentimes on TV they don't give you enough time to talk about, is that nothing happens right away. It's not like you're going along and it's just an average day and all of a sudden you decide you're going to kill yourself. It's a series of a whole bunch of things, or you're going to go kill other people. It's a series of a whole bunch of things that add up. And then something happens that might be very small, and that's what triggers you over that line. And if you're already, detoxing yourself and then really out of control and in a bad state in terms of your mental status, it's even more likely that you're going to have suicidal or homicidal ideation because you're letting all this pain and feeling come in so fast that you've been suppressing and been blocking out by using opiates.
Gerald, then what happened though?
Well, then I talked to my doctor, and I'm still in pain, and I mean the neck surgery, it never really fixed it. It made it so it was livable. But I am now just on marijuana. Mm-hmm. And I don't find, because I've had the treatment center before, I know what addiction is about and what it causes. And the marijuana doesn't seem to give me the addiction. I can go 3 or 4 days without taking it, but the pills, I couldn't do it. The drinking, I couldn't do it.
You know what, Gerald, I'm not opposed to that. You might be surprised to hear that, but I think that that's fine.
And it might work for you, Gerald.
Sure.
But here's the thing, Gerald. It might work for you, but be conscious of what you're doing.
That's the key.
And right. And if you start to see it get out of control, then you know where to go.
Correct.
But a lot of people sometimes, Gerald, especially with the potency of the marijuana now, they get addicted to it and they don't realize what's going on.
The other thing is that, Gerald, you're dealing with a complex situation where you have chronic pain, you're disabled. So some of the effects of marijuana may not affect your life as much as someone that actually is fully functional and needs to go to work every day.
Do you need to go to work every day, or?
Well, I don't. I was 58 when, it was in 2007 when it happened. It's 2013 now, so I've been on drugs for that period of time.
And you know the year, so we know you're doing okay.
Correct. Well, I just came back from Tacoma today. In fact, I just pulled up to my house. I just drove into my house right now, and I came back from Tacoma. And up there, you can find it so easily. It ain't funny.
Right. It's a lot easier to get marijuana in your area than it is alcohol.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And the thing of it is the marijuana does not take the pain away, and that's the fallacy of what everybody thinks.
I love that you're sharing that. That's an important thing that you're sharing that.
But neither do the opiates.
Yeah,
the opiates don't take the pain away either.
Neither did the opiates, but what it did is it took your mind off of it.
That's exactly right.
And that's the same thing with opiates. So we don't really even know the true classification for marijuana. There's so many active substances within it. Originally, it was classified as a hallucinogen, and then they realized there's amphetamine type of qualities to it. It's actually sort of unclassified right now. And there's just a lot more work that needs to be done on what the active ingredients are in marijuana and how they work. And now that we've had so many hybrid strains created, we're finding out that different strains do different things. So unfortunately, because it was so vilified by Nixon and the anti-drug movement and made a Schedule I drug, that stopped a lot of real research into finding out what the active ingredients were and then making real solid medications out of them.
Hey, Gerald, can you do me a favor? Go to, first of all...
I would, by the way, say if you are using medical marijuana, use a vaporizer because it will reduce the amount of toxins that you're taking into your body.
I make pills with it.
Right. Okay.
And that way
We
I
got a
don't, 'cause I'm not a
pharmacist in
smoker.
Portland that listens. Gerald, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to keep on listening to the show, and I want you to continually call in and tell us how you're doing.
Sure.
And because I think it is important. Like Andrew said, we're not like the temperance movement, and you're in physical pain. But here's the thing, Gerald. Like Andrew brought up a great point. You don't have to go to work, right? Because sadly, you have a disability. But
Correct.
a lot of people out there aren't afforded that same luxury.
This is more of a public health issue where he, is what's preferable? He's got chronic pain. Is it preferable that he has an opiate addiction or that he smokes marijuana occasionally? I would say smoke marijuana occasionally.
Right.
Ideally, you wouldn't have to do any of that, and you wouldn't have had the injuries, and you wouldn't have the problems. But we don't live in an ideal world. But I think your call. We got to move on. We're really lining up some calls
thank
here.
you for taking my call.
Gerald,
Hey,
give us a
Gerald,
call
really appreciate
anytime.
it.
If you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. Give us a call at 888. It's 800-222-5222. It's 800-222-5222.
You haven't screwed up on the number in a long time.
I know.
Give it one more time. I'm sorry I spoke over you.
You can speak over me anytime you want. And the number here is 800-222-5222. And I want to give a special shout out. We have a very healthy man in the studio tonight.
Healthier than any of the rest of us.
Healthier than you, Patrick, anybody.
All of us combined, he's
all of us
healthier.
combined. He takes the cake. Let's give it up for Ravi. But let's go to Amy in Vancouver. Welcome to Clean Radio, Amy.
Hello.
How you doing, Amy?
I'm doing fine.
So what's going on?
Well, I am in a current domestic violence divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was smoking marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to find out how much would have been in his system for him to torture me at night.
Okay, I want to say, first of all, this is a great question because Andrew has actually been dealing with this stuff on the news lately with a certain case with James DiMaggio.
Yeah, I've been representing the DiMaggio family, which is actually weird because I've been representing the perpetrator's side of the family. But let's just talk about the situation for a second. So how long had the domestic violence been going on? Was it your whole relationship, or had it been growing over time?
It was growing. It was growing over time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was sabotage of vehicles and engines and different things. But basically, he'd wake me up at night while I was sleeping. He would shine flashlights in my face to wake me up. He would.
Did he have a history of mental illness?
Well, I can't really state that at this point. He denies that he has any possible mental illness. But I would also wake up at night where he would be standing in front of the closet like he was in a trance. And then he would come over and push my head into the pillow and say these religious prayers. I
can pretty much tell you right now that he has some sort of mental illness. I mean, he either has a dissociative disorder, or which you often see at night, or he could have been either bipolar or schizophrenic, or have some sort of drug-induced paranoia, which happens a lot with chronic marijuana smokers.
How are you protecting yourself now?
Yeah. So what's going on now? What was the incident that actually led up to? Did he get charged by the police?
No. He's worship leader in his church, and so I was not believed by the personnel in the church that he was doing
terrible.
these things.
Yeah,
that's terrible when people don't believe you when you're going through a horrible situation.
Yeah, and listen, Amy, we actually do believe you. The question is, what are you going to do for yourself to get yourself help right now? Because we actually have facilities in Washington State, and we're friends with a lot of people up there, and we'd love to help you. So let us know what we could do.
I will.
No,
I will.
I mean, right now, what are we going to do to help you, Amy?
Well, I've actually put myself through post-traumatic stress counseling. I'm actually currently enrolled in a dialectical behavioral therapy class.
I'm not sure what that is, Andrew.
It's group therapy, talking.
Yeah. And I am currently in counseling. I suffer from some neuropathy in my body due to him sabotaging therapy appointments that I needed to go to after a back surgery.
Do you have a restraining order against him?
I tried. I had. And at the time that I did attain one, but the county that gave me the restraining order dropped it because they felt that I didn't have enough information to.
Okay, you really need to go see a criminal attorney and get an attorney to represent you in court and get a proper restraining order. That's
right.
I mean, I can't stress the importance of that.
You have to take care of you.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's the thing about what you're asking. The odds are, Andrew can tell you this. People, he could almost diagnose people in the sense of what drugs they're taking by what mental illness they actually have,
or what mental illness has been caused by the drug they're taking.
So
What about torturing animals? Because he was torturing animals, and then he was pushing on my back after my back surgery.
Yeah,
the traits you're describing is someone who's very sadistic, and we generally see that in sociopaths. And
that's what I was told I was dealing with.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was told.
So yeah, he's probably a sociopath. The scary thing about sociopaths is that they seem to be very charming on the outside and to a lot of people.
Yeah, we know a lot of them.
But then to the people that they're close to or the people that they victimize, they're extremely sadistic and cruel.
Exactly.
So it's a very hard to deal with mental illness, and it's basically there's no treatment for it. So these people end up in the criminal justice system, but unfortunately, normally only after they've created a lot of damage. So my advice is get a restraining order and do whatever you can to stay away from them.
And please, 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 Amy, go to those support groups. Take care of yourself, and give us a call back, and please let us know what's going on, and anything we could do to assist you, we will.
I will.
And I really wish, Amy, I had a better answer for you, but in the case of someone that's a sociopath, there's nothing better you can do than just stay away from them.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You confirmed and validated something that I've been needing validated for quite some time.
Yeah, Amy, sometimes we know what we know, but we have to hear it sometimes out loud.
Right, exactly.
Okay, take care and let us know you're okay, all right?
Please, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. No problem,
you.
Amy.
Bye-bye.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That was Amy in Vancouver, Washington. And it's really tough going through domestic abuse.
I mean, there's just a time when you have to deal with criminal justice and times that you don't. And if you're a victim, don't hesitate to get a good lawyer and get a proper restraining order. Let's jump to the next call because we're running out of time.
I have one question for you.
I want to get these calls in today.
I have a question for you, though, quickly, is because you've been dealing with the DiMaggio thing. Again, we go to the myths sometimes, the myths out there that marijuana, it's like this thing that they're all like these serene and, that it can't make you snap.
Well, first of all, anybody that's spent any time in a psychiatric hospital or in an ER has seen a lot of people come in for marijuana-related problems. And the most common is panic attacks and anxiety.
Where that can make you go,
well, people become suicidal and they become homicidal, and they can actually have long-term chronic problems. And the other thing is you can see the onset of other mental illnesses. So, for example, if you're prone to become schizophrenic, drugs like marijuana can bring on that illness earlier in your life than if you never smoked marijuana.
See, I think what you're talking about is so important. Because that that green room thing you had with Sanjay Gupta, where he's saying nobody's ever died.
Right, but there's certainly a huge amount of consequences.
But you're talking about
death doesn't have to be the only consequence for something to be problematic.
And you're talking about stuff that it's so impossible to prove that nobody has died when when you're talking about all the other things that go with it, whether it's the driving. We had a caller just now who said he's using marijuana and he goes, I just got home.
Right.
We don't know. Did you use, maybe I'll ask him the next time about smoking and driving. And
it's becoming a real problem because there's no way to really tell people's current THC levels when they're driving, so you have to charge them with reckless driving. Let's go on to another call.
Let's welcome back to KLEAN Radio, as always, Heather from Vermont. And Heather, just so you know, your stuff is on the way, so you'll expect that on Tuesday.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm excited because I've been looking with bated breath, waiting for it.
We like to make people wait. It patience. It teaches you. But I want to tell people, Heather, you are, you're a friend of the show. You've been calling in and telling us about your life. You're sober. You just had 15 years, and I'm a couple weeks behind you. So happy belated birthday as always. And why don't you tell us what's going on?
Well, one thing I sort of wanted to bring up was when you were talking about the physical consequences, even after you've gotten sober, because that sort of struck a chord. Because a couple of months ago, somebody who was really important to me the first couple of years of my sobriety passed away, and he was sober 20-something years, but he had liver cancer, and some of that was consequence of the drinking and
probably most of it.
Yeah. And then, and at the end of last show, I was talking about how I was kind of angry at my husband, about his picking up, and part of that anger is based on fear.
Well, let's so people understand. You had your husband, you're separated now from, who lives in a different state, just told you
he was drinking again.
He was drinking again, and that he was going to meetings.
Yeah, and he is, and he's still sober. It's just that the fear is because he has fatty liver disease, and the doctors told him, if you drink, you could die. So, I have fears and concerns about the physical consequences. And another thing, when you're talking about the after effects of marijuana, I mean, my husband doesn't remember 2 years of his life from when he was smoking pot. So, I mean, there's consequences.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing more and more the actual effects. There's also something called epigenetic effects of the use of drugs, which means that you have in your DNA, you have a straight genetic code, and part of it doesn't change, but there's an epigenetic layer in your DNA that can be triggered on or off with certain genes. And we're starting to learn in this literature from science that certain epigenetic traits can be turned on by certain drug use, and those can cause cancers and other diseases, and even things like memory loss and whatever. So as the genome projects move forward and we get more into the physiology of dealing with what we discover with these genetic profiles and whatnot, and labeling certain genes for certain diseases on the epigenetic level, I don't want to sound too highbrow here, but
you do.
But on the epigenetic level, we're going to start finding out that there's more consequences to each of these types of drug uses than we ever thought, and we're going to be able to identify more clearly the damage that is done by certain substances.
And that's another great point. The next time you see Sanjay Gupta, please invite him onto the show, Andrew, because I would love this sort of, I don't even want to say debate, but I would love this open dialogue from people out there that are saying these drugs don't kill. You're talking, within this past show, you've mentioned 5 things that are almost worse than death.
Yeah, I mean, pain and suffering from the side effects and the lower quality of life, I mean, from tobacco is unbelievable. I mean, 1 out of every 2 people will die from a tobacco-related death that smokes. Yeah. And those deaths are horrendous. Go to a hospital. If you smoke, you want to quit smoking, go to an emphysema wing at the General Hospital at Cedars-Sinai and go look at people. It's like they're drowning in their own like mucus and lack of bronchial tubes. It's one of the most painful things just to watch.
I see a road trip
I
happening.
couldn't even imagine living it. Look at people who have lost their entire jaw from chewing tobacco. It's just horrendous stuff. And, people, it's one of those things when you're young, you don't think about it, you don't worry about it. You might be miserable or depressed, and you're like, oh, a cigarette's fine. And then you get a little older, and all of a sudden your life's better, and you want to live. And unfortunately, you've created these horrendous health effects for yourself. Okay,
so Heather, what did you do this week to take care of you?
Well, that's a good question, because yesterday I was really bad about it. And I was bashing myself about it because some of my other isms were coming up, like I ate a bunch of crap and whatever. But today I went to the gym and I did water aerobics, and I did sauna and a steam room and a whirlpool.
Well, Heather, you did way better than I did.
You did way better. Yeah, there's only one person in the studio that you didn't beat, but he's a freak. So
that's my personal trainer who's just looking at me like, oh gosh, I know Andrew had 2 dinners last night.
Heather, don't beat yourself up over yesterday. Okay, be proud of today. And I think a lot of people out there that are listening do the same things. We constantly deal with this stuff, and in rehab that people look to the future, and the future so scares them, so they don't do anything. We often hear when people get sober, they go, well, can I have a drink on my wedding day? And then we go, do you even have a girlfriend? And they go, no. But that fear,
so true.
And it is. It's like, worry about things as they come and do what you can today. And today, who cares about yesterday? So you ate garbagey yesterday. That's not a word. I just made it up.
And you can't change that.
You can't change it. But today you did your aerobics, your water aerobics and all that jazz, Heather.
Yeah, I set the goal of being less sedentary. I mean, even before I decided to go to the fitness center, I'm like, okay, I have a happy playlist. I'm going to dance in the kitchen. And so, I danced around.
The funny thing I find about exercise is that, you never want to do it unless you're really, really into it. Yeah. But then if you go out and you do it, you actually can't believe how much better you feel. And how much you actually enjoy just like moving. But when you're lying in bed, it's tough.
I don't really believe in exercise, but
he will after he quits smoking.
You know what? Probably not. I'll believe in eating. Heather, give us a call back next week. And
I will.
Thank you.
I'll also say that the Al-Anon meeting that I went to on Thursday was awesome. So
okay, that's awesome. And Heather, remember, you're human. And I think everybody out there.
And if Judas' package doesn't arrive, you can call and complain to him.
Okay, that sounded really bad for a whole other thing of reason.
Yeah, I'm not going there.
Yeah, I'm Facebook friends with him. I'll shoot him a message.
There you go. Yeah, just harass him on Facebook.
Please, everybody else does. Heather, thank you very much for
All
the
right,
call.
bye-bye.
And a different, yes, your T-shirt and sweatshirt package will be arriving in your house in Vermont on.
Which, by the way, someone said they were up at Long Beach, Washington. We have a hospital facility up there, 50 beds.
The
up
whole
there.
town is strewn
And
with.
we've like put up a bunch of our T-shirts and hoodies out there, which are pretty cool.
Yeah.
But somebody gave me a call and they said like half the town is wearing them.
But there's 32 people in the town.
Well,
so,
I think there's 1,200.
There's 3,500 actually. Population 3,500.
Oh, is that how much it is? You looked
Pretty
it up?
close. No, I asked Remy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she said, I said because when you came to the town, did they add 2 to the number?
Yeah.
That would be so cool. I want to go to towns
It's a
like
cool
that.
place up there. I'm gonna have to bring you up there, Judah. We keep saying I'm gonna bring you up there, but
and it's Long Beach, Washington. But to everybody out there that's just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. It's amazing that all the calls we're getting from our new stations. But one of the questions we're asking tonight is what are some of the most dangerous drugs? What do you think are some of the most dangerous drugs? So I'd love to get from people around here. Mark, what do you think?
I think that drinking is the dangerous drug.
And why do you say that, actually?
Because of the consequences that come with it. How it slowly takes apart the person and takes apart everybody around that person.
So I love that. We got 1 for drinking from Mark, especially I drank, and I agree with you.
And what I think is so interesting about him, he's talking about the type of alcoholism that's progressive.
Yeah.
So, we have the clear genetic alcoholism where people drink and they're immediately just off to the races and have consequences right from the beginning. But there's a more insidious type of alcoholism that's gradual and progressive as people build tolerance and have to drink more and more to get the same effect.
And it's an amazing point because I was actually talking with one of the clients yesterday, and sometimes it's hard because I got sober when I was 22. And I always say I was blessed. I was blessed that I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids because it made it easier for me. I had no responsibilities. Sadly, sometimes when people...
Well, you did a lot of damage to your parents.
I did a lot of damage to my parents that they still remind me of. No, but they deserve to also. Yeah. But here's the thing. It's like sometimes, you're right, that's a great point, and that ends what I'm saying. You're right, we all do the damage we did. Yep. And I'm going to tell him that the next time I see him. What about you, Steve? What do you think is one of the most addictive drugs or dangerous drugs? Yeah, get those headsets on, man.
I know. I'm doing too many things here. I don't think it's any one thing because I'm looking at all the different things. I think it's the person who doesn't realize they have the addiction and they just keep on ruining their life. I wrote down just a few. I mean, ones that I think really...
Steve, I got to tell you, you got to speak into the mic.
We got to tell the engineer.
He's got the engineer. He's got
that right there?
Yes.
There you go.
I think when I look back on my list, I have prescription drugs, anger, alcohol, sex, pot, food, relationship addiction, just like the lady right there, crystal meth and tobacco. The 2 that really wear down the body as you get older is crystal meth and tobacco. But I think all these, when the person doesn't realize, won't face up to the fact whatever they're running from, and they keep on running whatever addiction it is.
Yeah, and I think, the good point about that is that, most people don't just have one drug of choice anymore.
Right.
We're seeing most people with substance
rare
abuse
breed.
and along with process addictions is we're understanding more about how the brain works and how the dopamine systems are triggered to give a feeling of pleasure. We've realized that addiction comes in many forms and there's many things that can create that reward system triggering. So gambling can often give the same feeling and reward system as doing cocaine. So, and the one I really like about gambling is that they found out that it isn't actually when you win that you get a reward.
It's when you lose.
It's when you lose, and it's also that feeling right before you find out whether you win or lose. that's the real trigger. That feeling of like anxious anticipation. So we're just finding out more and more amazing things about how these different things, work and why they cause dysfunctional behavior within people.
And Steve, I'd like to thank you for sharing what 1976 was like for you.
There you go. Also, there's a movie
thing,
called The Gambler, 1971, with James Caan. That whole
an
thing you just
amazing
talked
movie.
about.
That was a great movie.
That might be one of the best gambling movies of all time. Is The Gambler with James Caan?
Right, not the one with Kenny Rogers.
Not the one with Kenny Rogers. That's like That's like
No
the
way to hold 'em.
That's the pro gambling song, right? Like every gambler has that song. Steve, you rock. You just listen to Clean Radio. We are a show though about addiction and recovery, but we're also a show about having fun talking about this stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's important to have
people.
fun.
It's
Yeah.
important for people because all the time we're meeting people out there. We're meeting families that feel like when they come into treatment and they put their family member in, that this is it. This is the end. And I want to tell you something. It's not the end. It's the beginning, and there's so much hope that you have to look forward to. You have to look forward to my cooking every Sunday night, which Ravi tells me the clients absolutely love. And we had about 20 alumni at our treatment center tonight eating with current clients. And if you don't believe that there's a cure for this stuff, you're wrong. And give us a call if you need anything. That number is 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. It's run by one of the coolest people in town, a couple of the coolest people in town, but Andrew Spanzwick, Dr. Jason Coe. I want to thank everybody that helps put this show together and all our fans out there. Andrew?
Hey, Judah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have a lot of new stations online in the Northwest, and it was great to have their calls. And listen to us next week on Clean Radio.
Enjoy your Airstream this week. The discussion continues.
I will be up in Washington.
The discussion continues at cleanradio.com.